Hi, ladies and gentlemen. We are live. It is August 6, 2017. It is time for our Indie Spotlight. Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Betzler. I'm one of your hosts, and tonight we're going to talk about an Indie Spotlight called The Sound of My Voice. Throughout all of 2017, we're spotlighting indies from 2012, which is 5 years ago. We've already done one called Killer Joe. We've done one called Amore, and tonight we are doing The Sound of My Voice is the name of it. And it's a kind of a cult movie. And if anyone amongst us would be a leader in a cult, it would be J Money here. J Money, how are you doing?
Great. I'm appreciating the fact that you put me as a leader of a cult.
I thought you might. It stands to reason because if any of us would be a follower in a cult, ladies and gentlemen, Dave Joseph.
That hurts. That hurts.
That's harsh.
It's equal opportunity around here, Davy Joe. So guys, it's time for, we haven't done this segment in a while. It's one of my favorites. It's August 6th. And I want to tell you some things that happened in history on August 6th as I roll through some of these photos. Let me tell you, on this day in history, in 1945, J Money will like this, the atom bomb was dropped on Hiroshima in 1945, on this day in history. In one of our favorite years, which is 1990, New York Yankee Kevin Mass hits his 11th home run in his 86th at-bat of his career, setting a record for a rookie.
Wow.
Fastest to 11 home runs, I guess. So that happened on this day in 1990, which, of course, we did this whole 1990 in review a couple years ago. So that's one of our favorite years. In 1996, exactly 21 years ago, the very first book in the Game of Thrones series was published. It was called A Game of Thrones, and that happened on this day in history. Davey, are you a Game of Thrones fan?
I have never seen an episode or read a book.
It seems like your thing. I'm a little surprised.
Yeah, that is surprising.
I'm interested, but I feel like I'm going to wait for the books to be finished.
Okay. Well, I'm only in season 3, so I'm a little behind. Also on this day in history are our birthdays. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Soleil Moonfry's 41st birthday, also known as Punky Brewster. Some of you may not remember that, but that's important to me because I actually went to college with Soleil. You know, we have that connection there. Do you guys remember Punky Brewster?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Guys, this is our evening schedule. Really not our evening schedule, our schedule of the 41st series of episodes. A few nights ago on August 3rd, we talked about Charlize Theron and Atomic Blonde. Right now, obviously, we're doing The Sound of My Voice, our Indie Spotlight. Our classic movie of this series is a big one. August 10th, we're dealing with Casablanca, which J Money and I saw together on New Year's Eve. And August 15th will be our 25th Sound Off. So that's coming up on August 15th. I don't know if you guys remember the trivia. If you guys have been following on our Facebook and Twitter and stuff, the trivia for this movie was that dealt with it. There were 3 college friends that made films together. The first of which was called Boxers and Ballerinas. Another Earth, which was an indie sci-fi film that came out, I think, 2010 or so, maybe 2009. They made a film called The East, and right now they have a very popular show on Netflix called The OA. This trio that worked together, they've been very prolific and made some interesting projects. We'll see if these guys think The Sound of My Voice is one of those projects. Have you guys seen The OA by chance?
Yeah, I've seen it.
David, do you like it?
I did like it. I liked it.
Are you guys ready for some summary?
Lay it on us.
All right, let's start talking about The Sound of My Voice. Peter and Lorna join a cult in the San Fernando Valley in order to make a documentary about it and thus expose the seemingly false prophet Maggie, who claims to be a time traveler from 2054. As they get in deeper, Maggie's teaching and charisma make Peter and Lorna start to reevaluate their relationship and their own beliefs. Gentlemen, how do you feel about that summary?
It's excellent.
Yeah, doesn't give too much away.
Nice, nice. I worked very carefully on it, so I appreciate the positive feedback there. Speaking of positive feedback, this is one of my recommendations. I'm recommending this film. This is the third and last of the 2012 indies that made my top 10 list that year. I find the film extremely compelling, as memorizing and as hypnotic as the cult members seem to feel that Maggie is. I feel like it's wonderfully detailed in the world that they've created, both with the cult and the future that Maggie may or may not be from. I think it's intensely provocative, ripe for discussion and dissection, which is why I think it's going to be fun to talk about tonight. Maybe not for Davey, though. Admittedly, I liked it less than I remembered liking it initially, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit. Had you guys seen this movie before, even heard of it?
No.
Neither.
This was not on your radar at all?
No.
No.
Okay. Well, I'd love introducing these movies to you guys. J Money, I have a feeling this might be your kind of movie, so I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, I did enjoy this movie. I don't know if I was mesmerized by it in the same way that you were, but I enjoyed it.
Dejo.
It was all right. You brought up the OA, which is really the one thing that I feel I'm like, did I seen this? It's very different. Don't get me wrong, but there's a similar vibe and a very similar performance.
We'll talk about Britt Marling, momentarily. Where's that fit in the Davies scale here? Is that like solid? Is that good movie?
Good enough. Yeah, it was.
So Zal, Batman, Taji, Britt Marling, they wrote the screenplay, and the screenplay I think is its strength in the sense that I think it's compelling and original. I think there's a lot of detail in the screenplay, and when I talk about detail, I think about the eating and breathing habits of Maggie, and how they sort of paint the world of the future. The whole process of entering the cult seemed very detailed and well thought out. Abigail Pritchett as a character, the little girl, was really interesting to me, and that seemed very detail-oriented. How do you guys respond to this concept of originality, compellingness, and detailed? Like, those are the adjectives I've really used so far. Anything on that?
I'll go with it. Originality, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Yeah, sure. Actually, you know what? Actually, there was a movie that I watched one time because I thought we were supposed to watch it for the show. It was called The Conspiracy. And
you mean when we were supposed to watch The Conspirator?
Yes. That movie was kind of like this movie.
Okay.
All right. So you know what? Maybe someday we should watch that one.
Maybe and maybe not. So do you have beer in the Feel the Burn mug, J Money?
Oh yes, of course. I'm feeling the burn. Literally, it's in my stomach.
Of course, yes. I'm sure it is. So compelling, originality, detail. J Money, you heard Davey's response.
Yeah. I think
Davey's response was not as compelling.
I probably would fall between the two of you guys based on what I'm hearing. I think it was an interesting twist on an idea and some ideas that probably have been sort of explored in other places, but I thought that they did some really cool things, and I think I like the way that they took their time figuring out what was going on. I think that there was a lot of good details, like what you're discussing. I think there's a lot of good attention to detail in what they were putting together, but it wasn't like an earth-shattering idea for me, but I also think it was interesting execution of it.
Obviously, I'm not saying this movie is as good as Killer Joe or more, but the can of worms that I wanted to open up with you guys is this movie walks a line, and I think this is where Davey sort of rejected it a little bit, and that is the line between ambiguity and clarity. Like for the last couple shows, we've been heralding the ambiguity of Killer Joe. The last couple indie spotlights anyway, the ambiguity of Killer Joe and Amour, or I should say the ambiguity within those films, because I wouldn't call those films totally ambiguous. This film challenges those lines or parameters a little more harshly.
I'm not entirely sure I understand what you mean. You mean like you feel like they
I feel like there's a ton of unanswered questions in this film. There's a lot of not just left in the imagination, lots that left completely unexplained. I think it is a purposefully ambiguous film. It can leave some viewers cold, like they want just a little more meat to pick on it. We hate films that are heavy-handed and sort of beat us down with information. But there's the flip side of that, and this film, did it give us enough? Because there's whole things that are just, there's whole scenes that are left unexplained.
The answers, though, I don't know the answers. I think it's probably better without the answers. I feel like that's the whole. That's the best part.
You want some answers?
I mean, look at it.
Do you feel like
do you want to know who set her up at the end for real? Yeah, but when you find out, maybe it's not that satisfying. Maybe it's better to just be.
Well, I mean, like there's whole sorts of things. Like, for example, the Legos.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Right.
I mean, like, we can interpret it, but I mean, like, there's, there's more than that. I mean, like, the girl was also getting shots in between her toes for some inexplicable reason. Like, details that don't pay off. And, in a regular Hollywood movie, I'm sure they would, and maybe we would feel, like that they were heavy-handed. But I mean, like, I think you guys must understand the basic point, regardless of the movie, that you know, like sometimes, you know, we don't like the heavy-handedness, but sometimes, you know, a movie be too ambiguous?
The sort of the strength of this movie is it's a light film. Like it goes. I mean, it moves and then it's over.
Only 84 minutes.
Yeah. If you get into all those details, not only are you risking the answers being not as interesting as the questions, a lot of that feel to the movie is going to go away.
You could have used a little bit more, though. I mean, like, I do feel like a few more explanations, just like a little more hints. You know what I mean? Like, it's a fine line. I understand, but
There's
like, you know, was maybe too careful with that.
There's a few glowing briefcases in this movie. No question about it. That's
a Pulp Fiction reference, ladies and gentlemen. J Money.
So, do you guys feel like there was absolutely no resolution to some things? Do you feel like there was an entirely ambiguous the end of this movie?
Not necessarily, but I mean, it does leave a lot up to interpretation. Like, and which is interesting. I mean, and that if we have time at the end, like that's maybe what I want to get into is like to see if you guys have an interpretation. It sounds like Davey doesn't.
I don't.
I mean, JB, the reason I asked is because I think for me there really was a point of view and there really was an answer that I think that they were trying to suggest. So when it became clear to what I thought what they were doing, that didn't bother the rest of the stuff. The ambiguity stuff didn't bother me at all.
All right, well, let's table that. Put a pin there, and maybe we'll have time to come back around to that because I feel like it's a good way to end the discussion.
Yeah, but I mean, like, ultimately, I'm just saying, no, I didn't find this movie incredibly ambiguous, or at least I don't feel like.
I see that you're saying that, and I disagree. Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
But I mean, like, part of the ambiguity throughout was what I found so compelling and mesmerizing. So it's a fine line. I mean, I think like the point I guess I was trying to make is I obviously clearly like the movie. I recommended it. You know, I could have used maybe a little bit more, just like a little hint more here and there, and maybe I missed something. But it doesn't seem like I did because the person I watched it with was so confused by it they watched it again instead of working today, and no new answers, just more questions. Now, with that said, is there something manipulative about the screenplay in that way? Like, you know, do you feel like they're purposefully shaping it to create question? Did the ambiguity feel natural and organic within the diegesis?
I think so, and I wonder whether they even have any answers themselves or if they just set this up to be a quandary.
So that's a bold statement, and one of the longest sentences that David has ever uttered on the show. J Money?
I didn't feel like it was off-putting or contrived, but I also felt like there's a preciousness to this movie, and I guess I was more aware of that, of that and how they approach like ambiguity because of that. You know, it's a very soft movie.
When you say, I mean, how is that different? Or maybe I'm misunderstanding how you mean by precious.
I guess what I would say is that I think the ambiguity in it fits into the mold or context of this kind of movie to begin with. I mean, I think that this movie, because of its indie nature, sort of would purport to have more sort of open-ended, ambiguous things, just in general. So, I didn't feel like.
What do you guys feel like was going on with the chapters? That's how I know to call them.
I remember like when it got to like number 4 or number 5, I'm like, why do we need this? Why is this happening?
Yeah, I heard that question before. It didn't bother me, but that question came up.
No, I just thought it was interesting. I mean, I guess they do it in books all the time, and I don't question it. So
that was actually my retort. So, J Money, what do you think?
Well, then, do you feel like it was just a trapping of style, that they were just trying to seem a little more like editorial?
It didn't bother me. I just thought of it as chapters, but come to think of it, I couldn't really figure out how they like the structure of the chapters. Like, I couldn't necessarily pinpoint like what made them chapters. Necessarily.
I'm not really sure why they did it. I don't think it would have. I don't think it added anything to it, unless there's an interpretation to it that I'm just completely missing.
Yeah, I agree. I also don't think it subtracted anything necessarily. But the question came. Talk about the direction a little bit. The key part of the direction is something that I think it was Davey that brought up. The pace I thought was pretty strong. It is only 84 minutes, which is not to say it moves fast. It's short. I feel like it moves at a very Proustian pace. I feel like it's very methodical. Again, I'm going to use the word hypnotic. Like, I feel like it's not slow, but it's not super fast, but it moves at just a pace to sort of lull you in, like a snake charmer almost.
Yeah, I agree, but I think that actually a lot of that has to come down with the casting, because I think that the pace of this movie would have felt really kind of grating if they hadn't found actors to sort of fill the space in a compelling way. I mean, I really do think that, and I know we're going to talk about performances in a second, but I really do account. I think the pacing is more bearable because of the performances ultimately.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
I think the movie just kind of floats along. I mean, it's definitely not flying, but it's light. I mean, it's a light watch, but it's not fast either.
Yeah, I know. So I guess that sort of backs up what I was saying. From a directorial point of view, the other thing that I liked is there was a ton of visual details, like using objects to make it more cinematic. You know, and this is not a film with a strong visual style. I don't think. I mean, like, I think there were some choices made, like I did not like the cinematography, for example. Like, I thought the lighting was kind of flat, and the color palette was purposefully muted, that I thought was actually a choice that didn't work in its favor. But besides, you disagree. I know you
totally
would.
disagree with this one. Yeah,
a lot of it's in a basement, so I mean, you can't get too carried away.
But that's a choice to put it in a basement. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
sure. But it's pretty crucial to the story, I think, that it's in a basement.
yeah, but I mean, there's many different basements that you can make look a certain kind of way. I did like that they used a lot of insert shots. You know, the details that we're talking about, particularly when it came to the eating habit of Maggie, or, you know, like the machines that she was connected to, or the Legos, or the needle. Like, those detail shots added a lot to the movie, I think. So anyway, that's what I liked about the direction. Anything about the direction that you guys liked?
Something that kind of irritated me in the beginning, and maybe it's because I was watching this on a plane. I felt like they did that, you know, that thing that filmmakers do where they make you think, oh my God, there's going to be nudity, and then they kind of like shoot around it. I find that distracting after they do it 3 times in the space of 10 minutes.
All the shower shots?
I get it. It's a shower. I don't.
But I mean, like, that was about the cleansing process in order to see Maggie.
No, I know, but I mean, to the way they kept doing that with the camera, I just like.
But I mean, like, they also covered other elements of the routine. Like, it was about the routine that you follow in order to be a part of this group.
Yeah, I know. I don't. I found the whole thing.
It's really just about the nudity there, the lack of nudity.
You know, it's just that, you know what it was. Is I'm honestly, this may not be fair. It's because I'm on a plane and I'm like, do I have to turn this off? Do I have to turn this off? What's happening?
It wasn't a lack of titillation. It was like you were worried that you were.
In this day and age, if you need, the sound of my voice for that, all I'm saying is, I just find it when I think that the camera is like doing acrobatics to kind of shoot around stuff, and when it happens 3 times that quickly, I find it to be distracting.
It feels less natural. It takes you out of it.
I mean, that's I think a fair criticism.
In terms of not great direction, like, I did feel like people were blocked into corners, and that's something you want to avoid. Like, it was very awkward staging going on that put the cinematographer in a bad spot. And I guess Jay Money wants to talk about that. I guess now's as good a time as any. You like cinematography, Jay Money?
Yeah, I do. I would agree with everything you're assessing. It was a very flat interpretation. It was a very flat, muted kind of movie. To me, that was purposeful and also beautiful. It seemed to match.
I agree it was purposeful, but I did think it didn't work.
I think to me, it matched the tone of what they're trying to do, and it also matched like the dehumanization of the idea of what they're going through. It sort of separated out the idea of these people together from their environment in a way that was much more interesting, because then it really does force you into the cult itself, the mind of the cult, into Maggie's personal space ultimately, and that makes it a little more unsettling. You know, it's like it puts you in a more tense situation. Like, I honestly found the art direction for the house fascinating, because it was a really interesting conscious choice to like remove almost all the furniture, have like the same beige carpeting everywhere, and a lamp here and a white blanket here. I mean, it was very meticulous what they decided to do.
I thought her room was really interesting.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, there was a lot of suggestion with the machinery and everything, but that to me was more about just adding mystique to her story. Whereas everything else, what they did, all the other shots of them getting ready and things like that, and then moving from one place to another, I liked how dehumanizing the architecture was for that. I think that was very purposeful, and I think the flatness of it is part of that.
In terms of direction, that I didn't feel was as strong was the performances. I actually thought the performances were somewhat uneven. And I actually liked Christopher Denham. I feel like he's very charismatic, but he did miss some moments, especially when angry. Like, those felt a little false in moments, but he was mostly good. You know, he has a very good scene, like, somewhere in the middle. Lorna, played by Nicole Vicious, I think she struggled mightily. I think she was really a weak link in this movie. There's no depth in her performance. That's DEPTH, J Money. There's no real sense of the past that they set up for her. I mean, I would even argue that she was probably miscast. She was not the right person for this role. And that brings up the bigger issue of Britt Marling, who is terrific in this movie, but she still annoys me. And she did in Another Earth as well. And perhaps it's the awareness that she created this role for herself, this role that has these long monologues and these sort of self-indulgent dialogue. And so maybe it's external factors affecting this, but there's something about that and her that I find off-putting. But I mean, I acknowledge that she is performing the role well and within her capabilities. I almost wish she, as an actress, she would do more other things than the things that she writes for herself.
Maybe need to see her do something different. And maybe she has, and I just haven't seen it.
I think you're absolutely right about Lorna. She, I guess I don't know if it was so much that her performance was off, or it's just like the character itself didn't really end up going anywhere, and maybe that's why I don't feel.
See, I mean, like, and normally we talk about that. It was on the page, but I mean, I actually feel like it was, in this case, it was her, because I feel like there was stuff on the page that she didn't make seem real, Yeah. And so I actually am putting this on the performance and the director for not bringing that out of her a little more. All right, so time is short, so it's time for J Money to, because Davey has nothing to say. So you've got an interpretation for this movie that you want to let us know what it is.
Not an interpretation so much as I think that they did answer. I guess for me there was an answer at the end. I don't know if do you feel like there was an answer at the end, or do you
feel like it was theories? But I also feel like I don't feel 100% about any of them.
Well, do you feel like they had an intention, or do you feel like they did want to keep it ambiguous?
I feel like the intention was to confuse me. Yeah.
Oh. I don't know. I guess I feel like they. And I've talked to other people about this at this point. I do feel like there are a couple of things that tip the scales in one direction for me, and that's the kind of thing I wouldn't have put together until afterwards, thinking about the stuff afterwards. But it's also like maybe I'm completely wrong, and maybe they want to keep it absolutely entirely ambiguous. Like I don't know if their intention really was to leave it open-ended, or if the intention was to like have this kind of surprise twist.
What do you think happened here? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, are we actually going to talk? I don't want to give. I mean, are we trying to not talk about the plot in a certain way, or I don't
know. I don't know what you're gonna say. So I mean, like,
I think it's we're way into it. Let's go into spoilers and stop the show now if you're worried about it.
Well, do your best to dance around if you can. But I mean, I don't know where you're going, so because I don't have confirmed theory.
Just the big central question, is Maggie what she says she is, or is she not what she says she is? Is she what the other people purport her to be, the main characters? Otherwise, I think that they did answer that. I think the movie has an opinion about that. I don't know if everyone would interpret it that way, and I don't know if I don't know if I just read into it as well. So I'm asking if you guys, by the end of it, thought that the movie actually did answer that specific question.
Yes, I thought they did answer that one.
There was a red herring that led us away from one direction, and then there's a twist that brings us back to the other direction. There's compelling evidence on both sides now. I am not sure. No. If you're saying the last thing that we see, the last twist, is the defining thing, then maybe, but that is the last thing. But at the same time, like, when asked, Peter's answer is, I don't know. And that's how I feel. Like, I don't know for sure. I mean, I feel like there's compelling evidence either way. Like, for example, like, I also wondered if the whole thing was staged by Maggie, the whole capture, if you will. Because, I mean, she already said that she was leaving.
So do you think that her mom was in on it?
Not necessarily, no. But I wondered if the Treasury Department was in on it.
Oh, that I don't. That's that we don't know.
No, I know we don't know. But I'm saying that was something that I wondered.
Or if they're even, the government.
Really, who they say they are? Exactly. So, I mean, like, that's where my mind was going. And J Money, you seem angry.
Why?
I don't know. Like, well, there's steam coming out of your ears. Like,
No.
You don't have to take this so personally.
I'm not. I'm listening to you guys.
Yeah,
I'm not angry at all here, JB.
J Money, what did you think she is who she says she is?
I think that's what the movie is suggesting by the end of it, and it's not just because of that key moment that we're talking about, the twist at the end. I think it's because of that, plus the other things that are left unanswered before that you can add together towards that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I think there's a lot of different interpretations, but it's also like I think if you look at the things the movie actually shows you about the people in this relationship, that's what I think that it adds up to. You know, it's hard to say because, like to JB's point earlier, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I think that the challenge is to pick through what was unanswered and decide what is actually important and what isn't important about what's unanswered. So, you know, I think that you could always interpret it different ways. I happen to think that the movie makers were going with a specific answer by the end of it, and I'm curious if other people got that impression. That's all.
It seems like Davey did not.
Well, I know. I mean, I think that I thought that the one thing I had, and maybe I don't. The one thing that I had was I thought that there was some validation of her at the end, and I thought that kind of made the whole.
Then how do you explain away the investigation and all that other stuff? How is that? How do you deal with that?
Well, those were whatever, and we don't know who they are. Whatever they're her enemy.
That's a level of ambiguity all to itself.
Oh no,
well, we know that they're not who they say they are.
There's tons and tons of unanswered questions. I just thought the one thing I got that I could have at the end was that she is who she says she is. And then I thought the overriding theme of the movie would be just sort of a cautionary tale against, being overly cynical or
so
skeptical.
The moral is don't be overly cynical about cults? Is that what
or skeptical, I guess. I mean, that's not like Aesop's fables here. I mean, it's just don't jump to conclusions, I guess, would be what I'd say.
Okay, don't jump to the conclusions. Don't read a book by its cover. The lesson we learned at age 4. All right, guys, we are so far behind right now. I've got to wrap things up. So that was the sound of my voice. I don't know what conclusions we came to, but you have to see the movie and check it out for yourself. Our next indie deals with a well-known comedian who collaborates with his NPR buddy to turn his affliction into a movie in our next indie spotlight. And that's coming up in a month or so. But before that, in 4 days, next up is our classic movie discussion, and we're going for a big one, an all-time big one, possibly the biggest movie we've ever discussed. You could argue maybe Citizen Kane was the biggest, but we're going Casablanca. We're going to dig into it on Thursday, August 10th. So that's coming up here for us. In the meantime, guys, you want to say anything to our audience?
Anything to our audience.
I feel like that joke's getting old, J Money.
You still set it up, though.
All right. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining. This has been this talk about the sound of our voice, and we'll see you in 4 days to talk about Casablanca.